Welcome to Curito Connects. I'm your host, Jenn, and I've been conversing with friends around the world about life challenges and impactful moments. Conversations on this platform look at answering the questions, how we overcome challenges and how our experiences shape who we are and the work we do today. I hope this work can inspire you on your own personal and individual journey. Let's dive right in. Hello, my guest today is Allison Warren, founder, designer of Modernplum, a Chicago-based sustainable linen home decor company that has an eco-conscious mission that she started in 2014. Hi, Allison.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you? Thank you so much for waking up so early. You're in Chicago right now while I'm talking to you here in Taipei. So really appreciate you getting up early to chat with me this morning.
Oh, great to be here.
So Allison and I connected back in, it was 2018. That's how long ago it was, before the pandemic, when I wanted to order my own set of linen beddings. And through my research, I found Modernplum and really liked your aesthetics. And that's how I reached out and connected with you for my new apartment. I was like, oh, I would like some linens. And so I feel like I might be the only one in Taiwan who has a set of your
I think you
beddings.
are. Yes.
But hopefully not the last after this episode. I highly recommend sleeping on linen sheets if anyone is interested in using natural fabric, especially like for our very hot and humid summers we get out here in Taiwan. I'm thrilled for Allison to be on Curito Connects today to talk about how her experience living in a mid-century modern glass house was really impactful for her and the Modernplum journey. So, Allison, let me stop here and have you share your story with us.
Well, the glass house was a house that my husband and kids and I moved into in about 2002, I believe. We were living in Champaign, Illinois, teaching at the University of Illinois at Champaign in the architecture department. And we were in search of a home, making a family home, and really wanted to find that place where we could, raise our kids. And I remember seeing this ad for this house that had been on the market forever. And I said, we've got to go see this house. So we drove up, and the most amazing, beautiful glass house was there. Very much like the Farnsworth house. So the Farnsworth house is a Mies van der Rohe summer home that was built in Illinois, and it is very minimal in terms of its design. Floor-to-ceiling glass windows, beautiful woodworking, great craft, the construction of the house. Both in the Farnsworth house and this house that we saw, you could tell that, the architect was very interested in detail and really making art to live in. But there was one problem, which is that this house had been in disrepair. So we saw mold everywhere. We actually saw a hole in the flooring, so we could see down into the crawl space. It was just everything was fogged up. It was not a nice looking place, but there was something about it that just made us fall in love. So we spent about 5 years renovating it, and it was just very transformative for me. And it's the reason I started Modernplum. So it was a nice find.
So so this modern glass house, was the owner was going to sell it, or what was the story behind? I guess you guys did a little research too, right? Like who built it, which were the families that lived in it before you guys?
Yeah, so it was built in 1967, and it was built originally for a couple who were teaching in the veterinarian department at U of I, and so they were professors. And they just wanted a house that really felt like the sun was being captured and that they were in an open air space. So very different than the kind of architecture that you usually find in, Illinois or places in the north where, you have heavy materials, a lot of brick is used. Windows generally aren't that large. The architecture inside is very dark. And so this couple really just wanted to kind of turn that upside down and create something that made them feel elated and free and really just kind of connecting with the sun and the landscape. And so that was the story. John Replinger is the architect, and he was a former professor at the university as well. And
Wow.
it's a very interesting story with him because he was known in the 60s and 70s as being an architect in the area that just was able to create these beautiful modern masterpieces, really.
Hmm.
And so our home was as unique as it was. There were 4 or 5 other, homes by him in the area. They're all very different, but Champaign Urbana has a bit of a reputation as being, this place where really interesting modern architecture was made. Not
Hmm.
anymore, but it does have that history. And so I think as architects and designers ourselves, we wanted to connect with that history as well. And we felt like this house was really worth saving. That was another part of it too. There was a restoration piece of it where, we were kind of like caretakers,
Yeah.
taking care of this, restoring it, lifting it up so that it could continue to uplift others when we left. And so there's a kind of a, I don't know, like a mission with that, which, was very unexpected. We didn't we didn't go out, and say, oh, we're going to find a house so we can restore it and kind of, give it over to the next owners.
Right.
But that's what ended up happening.
So
So,
the restoration took 5 years. What
yeah, we
was
were there for 5 years.
You were
And
there for 5 years?
so, the restoration I don't think was 100% complete. I think there was much more to do. And I can tell you what the owners have done to it since we left. They've kind of picked the project up and kind of run with it in their own way. But we did, I would say, the real heavy lifting with, getting rid of the mold, repairing the flooring, um, you know, uh, cleaning. That was a
Yeah.
big part of it. There was some roof work that needed to be done. We did it mostly without contractors. It was something that, was a weekend job for ourselves.
Right.
And that, at that time, that was interesting because our children were not quite old enough to participate in the restoration, but it became, this maybe our third kid for my husband and I, and it was a very important project that we did together.
Was
Um,
it the first project you've ever done together as a couple? Like,
so we've done some other houses before, and so we kind of knew what we were getting ourselves into. But this one was the one that we cared the most about, I think,
mhm.
because it was so architecturally interesting, and it just needed to be preserved. It was not a home that you know we wanted to see sort of
Get
go
demolished?
right go
Yeah.
downhill. So yeah, that's what we
So
did.
can we go back to how this house basically allowed you to come out with Modern Plum?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I would say it wasn't too long after we moved in, maybe 3 or 4 months, where I had this feeling, and it was just kind of this deep knowingness that I was restoring this home and I was living in this home for a reason, that it just wasn't a home, that there was something that I needed to get out of it or should be getting out of it. And what I wanted to do is, um, at the time, I was thinking about not just renovating the architecture, but how to bring in interior elements that
Mhm.
weren't part of the architecture, but were part of the space. And so that's how I started to design textiles. It was just really an organic process of, we're doing the architecture. Now we need to think about furnishings. And as a graduate of Cranbrook Academy of Art, I was really, I had a background in designers that were very interested in that combination of decorative arts and architecture, and how those two elements could be very closely aligned with one another,
Mhm.
work together in terms of their design and just their aesthetics. So that's what I was thinking about. And then, just the linens came because I couldn't find anything, on the market that really was appropriate for a mid-century modern house. And so that's how the linens happened.
Mhm.
Um, and in specific, craft was really important in these textiles, as was in the house. I was also really interested in the environment, and also having the linens be really connected to landscape, the colors of the landscape. So if you think about the palette of Modernplum textiles, they're not colors that you would not see in the landscape. So you're not going to see any like neon purple, because that's
Right.
not something that we see, in any of the four seasons. I use linen because linen is a very organic fabric, and supernatural. So it's, you see it, it has its own way of being in the world, which is like nature, and it was very much mimicking the experience of nature that we were living with being in this transparent house. And also, there's a sustainability focus to the way we make our textiles,
Mhm.
which is, I think, also something that modern architecture is interested in. Also, it is a very minimal way of
Yeah.
building, and it doesn't use resources that it doesn't need. And so that's what we do as well. We're made to order only. So we don't make a lot of inventory that we may or may not sell. It's more, let's make something custom, made to order, that we know is going to go to a good home. Um, so there's just a lot of parallels, I think, between what Modern Plum has become and sort of our design approach, and what kind of started at that house. How that house sort of influenced those ways of thinking.
So you were still working at the university at the time, right? When you were doing the renovation work.
Yes.
And
Yep.
so simultaneously while you're teaching, and so you were teaching what department, or what were you teaching at the time
So
at
I
the
was
university?
I was in the architecture department, and I was teaching in the first year. I was actually co-coordinating that whole freshman year, where students come into the program, and in a year we basically give them a background in drawing, in color, in foundational aspects of art. And
Yeah.
then we also get them to start designing three-dimensional pieces.
That's a
Uh,
lot.
yeah, it's a very big year for them.
Yeah, well, also for you.
Huge. Yes, it was huge. It was a lot to think about,
Yeah, so you
for
were
sure.
dealing with the curriculum, then you were also dealing with the renovations. You were also being a mother to two kids, right? And then
Yeah.
on the side, you somehow had this pet project that was, really speaking to you at the same time, all happening within that 5 year span, right?
Yeah.
Did you at any point in your life think that you were going to start your own business?
Well, I absolutely. That's the word. If it was going to be just one word, it would be definitely yes. I've always thought that artists and designers, if you want to, if that's something that you really want to do, um, it it it's important to think of yourself also as an entrepreneur, and because artists and designers aren't really connected to an industry, they are, but something that you have to really want to do and sell yourself. And so I think that managing a career as an art and designer is like being a business owner. So I always knew that I, would have my own practice. And actually, before I went to graduate school, I was a painter, and I did the whole gallery thing, and that to me was a business. So this, Modern Plum was really just an evolution of that studio sort of art practice that I had before.
Yeah.
And everyone's different, but for me, I think teaching is really not the same thing as making work. You can be creative, but it's a different way of being in the world as a creative person. So I think that for me, Modern Plum just needed to happen. It just was inevitable that, making and wanting to kind of respond to the house would
Yeah.
would make its way into my practice. So,
So, how did you come up with the name Modern Plum?
so we would call the house Modern Plum. That's
Oh,
that's what we called it, or we'd call it the Plum House, Modern Plum. It was a pet name, and so that's just how we ended up, or I ended up naming the
yeah. Was
company.
there a lot of like plum trees on that property?
No,
Or-
no, we were thinking of plum as being like, oh, it's a plum house, it's a great house kind of thing. So yeah, that's how it was named.
So, of the many different like you mentioned earlier, right? Painter to architect to professor, then the starting Modern Plum. Would you say that a lot of the different times that you've had to kind of like play out the different careers were there in some ways same, but also different? And in terms of Modern Plum, was it tricky for you to figure out, where were you going to source your linens, right? Were you going to buy them domestically? Were you going to travel abroad to source them? How were you going to find your seamstress? How were you going to figure out the structure of how this business was going to work and promote Modern Plum into the market space that I guess in some cases people might say, oh, it's so saturated, like homewares and linen and beddings, and there's all these noises. So how did you
Yes.
keep yourself quite grounded in, in knowing that like this was really, you were so passionate about the house and the renovation work and the junction between the linen fabric and textile and the home itself that you wanted to share with more people?
Yeah, so it was just organic. It's this is an interesting question because I'm teaching a little bit at the School of the Art Institute in Chicago, and I'm developing a course called Art to Market, which really deals in that whole question: is as a creative person, as a designer, how do you make that jump between working for yourself and getting your work out there and actually making it a business. There's a lot of ways that can happen, but in the case of Modern Plum, I had already made that first group of linens for, we had 3 bedrooms, and then I made some table linens. um, and it evolved from there. I took some photographs. I think I had an Instagram account, put some images on Instagram. uh, and I think that having the background that I did in working in the gallery sphere as a painter beforehand, and also I think my experience in grad school um, was really instrumental in, I think, having a comfort level with that process of just getting your work out there. Not being afraid to fall on your face, what does rejection feel like, and being really comfortable with that, because in the beginning, nobody knows who you are or what you're doing. I think that that's important, just getting past that. The feeling of being, maybe an imposter, like in the back of your mind, who do you think you are? Being able, doing something like that, really moving past those voices. So there's not one specific thing. I think it was a lot of little, moves, getting the pictures out there, being, talking to people. My seamstress is actually in Chicago. So finding that seamstress was one of the most difficult components. And I found her just by talking to everybody I knew. So really using the network that I had as a teacher, and as well, teacher and a student, a design student. So, all those pieces, just using them to my biggest advantage, I think is what was helpful. So, and then, you start to get some momentum going. And I would say that, a business is, I like to think of the business as a living, breathing thing. And so it's either advancing or staying the same, or maybe retreating in terms of
Mhm.
its health and, yeah, its health. So
Yeah.
I think always keeping your foot on the gas pedal in whatever aspect of the business that you're working in is important as well. So
Right.
a lot of facets to it.
Yeah. That's I think that's very well summed up in terms of how one should approach, right? Whether you're a creative or you're an entrepreneur, how do you stay on top of what you're trying to do and not lose hope, right? That like it seems so daunting or scary, or how do you go and really put yourself out there and stay focused, and be flexible to change tracks if it's not working, right? But like you said, always put the foot on the gas pedal. You just got to go.
Yeah.
Don't stop. You just got to go. You
Yeah.
never know where the road will lead you.
Yes.
Um,
Absolutely.
so you're hitting you're 8 years now, right? It's 8 years since.
Yes, eight
Oh,
years.
8 years.
It's been so it's gone by so quickly, and one thing that I wanted to just mention and add to what I was just talking about is, and 8 years. It's taken me 8 years, I think, to get here, but it's also important as you're building a business and um, defining what it is that you do. It's important to, especially in an industry like bedding and textiles, which are very saturated,
Yeah.
is to find your niche and really niche down as much as you can. Is especially if you're a maker. So a maker being, the person that has their hands all over the product, the designer, not a multi-million dollar corporation. It's a different kind of business, and the niche that you put yourself in is what's going to make people know you. So,
Mhm.
for instance, Modernplum started out as, we make linens. It was very broad, and we're still doing that, but we are niching down to being made to order and custom only, and
Mhm.
only working with linen fabric. And so if you look at that proposition within this very large, saturated marketplace, there's not a lot of people that are doing that.
Yeah.
It is a little bit more unique. And so as a maker and as a, smaller operation, it's a place, it's kind of a lane where we can travel. It is kind of our lane at this point.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, I mean, there's other people doing it, but not as many. That has been important to make that distinction.
How long did it take you to kind of decide finally, like, this is the lane we want to be in, right? Versus, like you said, being very broad in the beginning.
So I'd say about 5 years. 5 or 6 years. It hasn't been very long that I've been talking about the business in those terms.
Right.
Also, with that comes, a smaller audience.
Hmm.
And so, I'm talking a lot to the trade, to the interior design and architecture industry at this point, and customers that value and want their own thing. That's my other customer. But that is actually pretty small, that group. But that's good. That's the way we want it, because we know who to talk to.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I definitely, yeah, I mean, I would add on that by doing so, customer service is 100%.
Mhm.
But because that's really important. And the fun part is, you're the expert and you're the designer, so you know best how to tell the clients like what would work, what wouldn't work, what would be your recommendation. And I think that's a very fun process for homeowners if they want to use linen fabric or textile to decorate their home space, right? So I
Yes.
definitely think that's another angle to Modern Plum and what you've been doing.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to phrase it or to think about it. I think because I've spent so long in my career as a teacher, that I want to work with customers and clients in a way that is, really getting in the weeds in terms of design and what they really want, and making something amazing and unique just for them. So I think that teaching really comes into play, consulting, and I wouldn't want to do the business without it. For me, it's more than, just the manufacture of linens. It's really, the design aspect.
So when you talk about this is just a side conversation about customization. So it's basically anything that someone can think of, right?
Sure. Yeah, we say that it's within the bedding space. Absolutely, it can be anything. But we can also branch out to other things like curtains, and we're doing a project for somebody that wanted a bed skirt that matched the bedding, and so we're doing that as well.
Yeah.
So my workroom is amazing. I haven't mentioned my workroom. So this is my seamstress, who is originally from Poland, and she came here when she was older. So she's a little older now, but she came here when she was in her 40s, and has an entire, 20 years of sewing with linen in her a home, her home country. And so she is just amazing and very, very talented and very, very well versed with what linen can do. So really, it's bedding, but then it's whatever else that you want to add on to
Right.
in a space. We can even do upholstery.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's we have designs on our website, but that's just the beginning, really.
It's very exciting. But speaking of your seamstress, and this is just throwing a question out there, just food for thought. But because with any industry and any company, we encounter this, right? What happens when she needs to retire, right? You're going to have to find another seamstress and then start that process again, or the longevity of Modern Plum long after you're gone, or how do we maintain the vision for Modern Plum? And I love the angle of sustainability, which you often talk about too in your other press releases and interviews.
Right. So, she's going to be a hard person to replace. And that's a great question. I have not put a lot of energy or thought into what's going to happen. Um, I hope that I can find someone with as much background and really love for the fabric. I think that that's really key. Um, yeah, because linen is so unique. And I think that in terms of what's going to happen to the company, um, I have a good 15 to 20 years left. So I, and who knows where we'll be in 15 or 20 years. So I'm just going to keep doing it and, see where it all leads.
So I also wanted, we talked about this earlier before we started recording, and I thought it'd be great to bring this into the conversation too. So during the pandemic, was that a plus or a negative to your business and industry? And how have you seen the landscape change? And for Modern Plum, how did you? Well, I guess you didn't have to really work around it because it's still custom order. It wasn't like you were running a store where you had to close shop. So that part probably logistically didn't affect you too much. But in terms of orders coming in or um, yeah, I think how was it for you during the pandemic? And I guess we're hitting 2.5 years now since it started.
Oh gosh, yes. Well, so when everybody had to just stay at home, we were locked down for 6 months or so. Um, it was great for the business, which kind of sounds a little bit counterintuitive. You would think, oh, lockdowns, people are not going to be in the mood or wanting to really decorate their house, but the opposite is true. And it really, I think, benefited us to be an online business because if stores weren't open, then more people were shopping and doing things online. um, so it was good for that reason. I think that it has continued to I think really uh, get people to think about their homes, and they're doing things to their homes that maybe they've thought about and always said, oh well, we'll do that later. Well, now is that later time. And
Right.
I think there's been a real maybe recognition of how important the home is
Yeah.
to everyone during COVID. And, I think that is a wonderful silver lining. I think that the home can be so many things, so many positive things to people. It's your sanctuary. So, it is that space where you can do anything you want, and it's yours, and no one's going to say, "Oh, you can't do that." I love that idea that everybody has their own space, and it's their thing. And so I think as much as COVID has been so unfortunate for the home, I think it's been helpful.
Yeah, there was a whole time period where everyone was talking about, like there, a lot of people were cooking at home, right? When they had like the sourdough, I think was it people were making sourdough at home. There was all these
Yeah,
different things
right.
people were posting and making. So definitely homemaker situation. The industry has grown, and all that. And I definitely agree that a space is. We have to think of it as a sanctuary for ourselves as well. We're coming short
Absolutely.
on Yeah, we're coming short on time, so I just want to wrap up with a few more questions
Okay.
while we still have you here. So I guess two questions. One would be could you tell the audience who are listening to this episode who are not so familiar with linen, and I think with fast fashion these days, and we kind of have forgotten natural fabrics,
Hmm.
and whether it's the clothing we wear or the things we use, right? So
Hmm.
I guess it'd be like, could you give us a little 101 about linen fabric and the amazing ability it has for the environment, but also for those of us who use it, in our space, and also how to differentiate good linen from bad linen, right? It's there is synthetic linen out there as well. um,
Yes.
and then my last question is, what continues to keep your creative energy going? So, you said you started Modern Plum because you lived in the modern glass house at the time. And so now that you've moved away from it, what on a daily basis do you do to keep yourself still, light bulb blinking with your creative ideas. And what do you do to keep yourself kind of grounded in the many different things you do on a day-to-day basis as well? So just these two questions.
Okay. Well, the linen question that's a great question. People ask me that all the time. And, for the sustainability kind of environmental benefits of linen, there's no other fabric that can touch it. And, um, you know, when linen is grown, so it's like wine. Actually, there's places where it likes to grow and places where it doesn't do so well, and that really speaks to the idea of good linen and bad linen. You really want to ask where the linen was grown, and so linen that is coming from Europe, France, Belgium, that climate is great for linen, and it makes a very strong flax plant. Flax is the plant that is woven, and that's what makes linen. It likes cool evenings, and so for the flip side of that would be if you're seeing linen that is coming from India, or really hot climates that don't cool down very much. You can get linen from these places, but the flax plant that doesn't like that climate as well, and so it's just not going to be as strong. And so
Mm.
I think one of the aspects of linen that is just so fantastic is that it is durable. It's the flax plant is really a very durable, fibrous, like kind of like a weed actually, plant. So when you weave that, it's very strong. It's durable. And it's just going to last a long time. It's if you're going to compare that to say a cotton, and you look at the cotton plant is really a lot more delicate, and so the weave on that it's a softer fabric, but it is not as durable. And so when you think about what fabrics to use for longevity and fewer purchases, which actually helps with textile waste, um, linen is just going to be that fabric that is going to go it's going to go the distance, which overall is better because you're just purchasing less. And so consumption sort of, is tempered a little bit with linen as a fabric. Um, Linen is also really wonderful for actually both cool and hot climates. It has, a bit of an open weave that allows for, the environment to kind of come through. So, air, there's circulation, which is good for, the body when you're sleeping in both, warm and cool evenings. Um, so there's a lot of things about linen that are just very unique, and I would say those are the top three or four.
Yeah.
um, what was there?
I think you're gonna have a book coming down the line.
You know what, I would love that. Sometimes I think of myself as I'm the Pied Piper of linen,
Yeah,
which
I think so.
which is fine. I'll take that. And so, it's also just incredibly beautiful, because it has that durability, and, that a little, I guess, a little bit more weight to it than cotton. It has a hand and a look to it that is really unique and just absolutely gorgeous. So, that's another reason to have linen is it just looks good. So for a designer, it's just a beautiful thing.
Do you, sorry, I didn't ask you this question, but I'm going to ask you now. Do you also wear linen outfits yourself?
I don't wear as much linen clothing as I do to sleep in. I don't know why. I know that linen clothing is also beautiful and organic, and it breathes and it lasts a long time. Maybe that's something I'll do coming up. I actually have enough linen. I could make an entire wardrobe for
There you
15
go.
people. Uh,
I just gave you two more. I gave you another idea.
we are thinking about doing loungewear and sleepwear, so pajamas. I'm very interested in doing, like a pajama that you can wear to bed, but then you can get up and you can wear it to brunch or something like that. So anyway, that's
I look
coming.
forward to that collection.
Okay.
And you asked me earlier what was the second question I had originally asked to wrap up our conversation. I usually go with books. Like I'll ask people like, oh, what books do you recommend? Or what 2 cents, words of wisdom do you have for others or who are creatives or entrepreneurs that you would say to them? But you could answer those. Or my question that I asked earlier was, what keeps you grounded or keeps you continuously inspired with your creative designs?
Well, that's a great question. So we don't live in the glass house anymore, but we do live in a high rise, which was designed by Mies van der Rohe, which is the same. It has the same general modernist features as our house, and so we have floor to ceiling windows. And it's a little bit smaller than our original house, but the architecture is very similar. So I do get a lot of inspiration from living here. um, and I think walks, being in the environment and seeing how the colors change, and just being immersive in the environment, is what I do. I'm a walker, and there's a pond and a nature preserve close by in our neighborhood, and I'm there quite often. And so those are the things. And then I think just being in my warehouse with my fabrics is also a thrill. So it's really fun and inspiring.
Right. I guess I could ask you, I mean, I said this earlier, in terms of what do you tell your students in this class that the one you said earlier where you're teaching the creative and entrepreneurial class where, the cross bridge between that, what do you usually tell students to inspire them to walk this path?
I think that as a maker, you need to love what you do. And I think that students that are going to art school or design school have that passion for making things, and it's really just identifying that bridge between making things for yourself and then what you could give to the outside world, with that skill set that you have as a maker. And so I
Mm.
think, for everybody, it's different. It's going to be completely unique. But I think if you're very, stay close to your roots and stay close to, what it is that you love making and doing for others, you'll find that business.
That's so encouraging.
So, yeah.
I think that's great. Okay, well, I will include your links below so people can, find you and shop on Modernplum, and follow you on Instagram, and
Fantastic.
reach out to you if they would like to order their customized linens. And I wish you all the best for this year.
Okay, thank you so much. It's been a great conversation. I appreciate the talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all we have time for today. Thank you for listening to Curito Connects. For more Connects content, collaborations, and discoveries set to inspire you on your own individual journey, please head to our website at www.curito.co. Until next time, stay inspired, and thank you for joining us at Curito Connects.